City Talks with Reuben Abati.
City Talks with Reuben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 105.1 FM. On this show, we talk about stories of political and human interest, stories that affect us as citizens of Nigeria, that affect our lives and also our society. And today we have a special guest who is a proud, committed citizen of Nigeria and who has served and represented our great nation Nigeria in various capacities. Please join me in welcoming Professor Pat Ukedinachi Utomi. Professor Pat Utomi is a well-renowned professor of political economy. He's also a management expert. He's served as a columnist, publisher, keynote speaker at various domestic and international conferences, and he has also served as chairman of various companies. Professor Pat Utomi was born on February 6, 1956 in Kaduna. At an early age of 15, he enrolled at the Federal School of Arts and Science. He later gained admission into the University of Nigeria, Nsukka in 1973 to study mass communication. He got his PhD from Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana, in the United States. Within a few months of his return to Nigeria, he got enlisted by the then former Vice President Alex Ekweme to provide consultancy services on some public policy papers. Soon after, he was appointed Special Assistant by former President Shehu Shagari. Following the end of the Second Republic, he became Chairman, Chief Executive Officer, Utomi Holdings Limited, and later Assistant General Manager, Corporate Affairs, Volkswagen Nigeria, Lagos, from 1983 to 1993. Professor Utomi is a member of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, also a fellow of the Institute of Directors, a member of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group and the Nigerian Economic Society, among many other professional bodies. He coordinated the establishment of several civil society groups on good governance and accountability, such as Transparency in Nigeria, the Center for Values in Leadership, the Concerned Professionals, and the Restoration Group. In the business sphere, Professor Utomi was vice chairman of the Platinum Habib Bank. Well, we can go on and on the whole day. It's quite a long list of achievements and distinction in the public sphere. At this point, let me welcome to this program Professor Pat Utomi. Thank you for joining us, Professor Utomi, on City Talks with Reuben Abati.
It's a great pleasure to be able to join you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Prof, let's talk about Nigeria at 60. Nigeria celebrated 60 years of independence on October 1. And from what we have seen, from what we have heard, many Nigerians and even foreigners are concerned that Nigeria has not been able to achieve its full potential to claim that title of being the giant of Africa in a true sense. Where do we go from here? What do we need to do? Quo vadis Nigeria? What are your thoughts, Prof?
Well, I think that what I must, communicate is the fact that I am the eternal optimist. I think that what makes us really human is the virtue of hope. When we lose it, we lose plenty. And I am hopeful that we can learn our lessons and turn away from the challenge path that we have traveled so far. I think that it is possible for a country to go the wrong way for many years and then find the right track. History is replete with countries that have done that. I like to sometimes give the example of Singapore, a country that was so dependent on Malaysia that the people of Singapore thought that their only chance of thriving was within the Greater Malaya Federation. And when in 1965, the Malays were really frustrated with this Chinese Singaporean called Lee Kuan Yew and chose therefore to get rid of Singapore from Malaysia. It was like the world came to an end. Indeed, as Lee Kuan Yew writes, in his memoirs, That day, he himself broke down and wept. And the big issue for Singapore television was whether they should show their prime minister weeping. Because in Chinese culture, it's not normal for a man to be seen weeping. But guess what? In one generation, in 30-something years, that same man would write a memoir, a biography, autobiography, that the title speaks everything from third world to the first, the Singapore story. So in one generation, they turned around all that fear, the fear that came from the only resource they had in their imagination being the British naval bases in Singapore. And Britain had just made a decision to shut down all their naval bases east of Eden. And so they were shutting down the naval base in Singapore. And this was the only real source of raw material for, of revenues for Singapore. So you can imagine the fright. But yet, just applying their minds within one generation, Singapore became the country to emulate. And so it is possible for Nigeria to turn that corner with the right kind of leadership, with citizenship. I think Nigeria can turn things around. It must first have a clear philosophy of nationhood. People respect each other and be ready to work together. It must have a strategy for development. Now, this strategy is critical because if with such a strategy, it can put its young people to work, derive a demographic dividend from this youth bulge that we have, then Nigeria can power to the front and become the country of promise, that country that can claim the promise of the founding fathers. But if it continues with this kind of leadership that we have, the arrogance of power and all of that, it's not likely to go very far, I can tell you that. If you look at how Nigeria has evolved as a country, it started with a general philosophy of ethnic nationalism. Who will most bring progress to their people? The so-called competitive communalism. Then military rule came. The convergence of soldiers and oil led us to this prebendal culture in which people were trying to get unnecessary advantage, if you will, to their people without fairness in the thinking. That has evolved to, if you will, today's rather thoughtless kind of triumphalist use of power in a way that essentially is arrogant, unbeneficiated. And that leaves people saying, what do we care about being in such a country? If that does not change, if that attitude does not change, Nigeria is going nowhere. But if people realize that they've made mistakes, then they can pull back and we can make some progress.
Well, Prof, on October 1, in his national broadcast, President Muhammadu Buhari called for reflection, from self-reflection to collective reflection, for all of us to make a contribution as to how to move Nigeria to a better future. And I recall that on that day, you convened 2 meetings on Nigeria, one which was a committee of elders to reflect on how far Nigeria has traveled, and also a constitution drafting committee that you put together. Would you like to share with our listeners the outcome of those 2 meetings? And why do you think that changing the constitution is the way forward?
Well, thank you so very much. You know, when I talk about hope and being a person of hope, those meetings, particularly the first meeting of elders, assured me that my hope was not without foundation. The concept, the ideas actually started, the Center for Values in Leadership runs every fortnight what it calls the Nigeria History Series. It takes, personages that have been part of Nigerian history and interviews them so that young people can learn firsthand issues related to Nigerian history. A couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. Umari Lazu, who was the head of the first think tank that Nigeria put together as a government think tank. And we're talking about some of these things. And he expressed such frustration. And I said to him, look, part of the problem of Nigeria is that it does not seem to have elders. That Nigeria's elders should be able to rise up. What's there to fear? And say to any government that's misbehaving, this is nonsense. This is the way we should behave. This is the tradition of our country. Why aren't elders? And he said that he was ready. He was writing his own draft of a constitution. He was ready. If I brought 100 elders together, he would go with them to the National Assembly and sit down there and refuse to leave until they began to enact a new constitution for Nigeria. And I was inspired by that remark. And so we began to work on a healing summit of the elders of Nigeria. Reconciliation and Healing Summit, we called it. And we chose October 1 for this. And we sent out word to some of the most outstanding achieving elders of Nigeria. Reuben, the response totally blew me out of the water. We wanted 70. We got about 130 of them. And if you hear the names, they were all like, who is who in Nigerian history? The opening keynote was taken by Alhaji Ahmed Joda. A lot of young people might not connect so well to that. Alhaji Ahmed Joda was one of the so-called super permanent secretaries. When I was writing my PhD thesis around 1980, I spent hours with those super permanent secretaries looking at the economic policy formulation in Nigerian history. And I was enormously impressed with Alhaji Ahmed Joda in 1980. He's been retired from the civil service for more than 40-something years. Alhaji Ahmed Joda is 94 or so years old. His brain is still as sharp as scissors and all of that. And he gave this incredible opening remark. First of all, he called for a constituent assembly to begin to write a new constitution for Nigeria that must be a people's constitution. He called for restructuring. He called for all those things people in the South think Northerners are fighting. He called for all of them. And historically analyzed how things evolved. He talked about what things used to be like, where it went wrong, and stuff like that. It was, look, people were transfixed to their locations as Alhaji Ahmed Joda spoke. And when he finished, Dr. Umari Lazu took over and said, look, the things I would have said, Joda has already said. So I agree completely with him. And then he added to that. And then when he finished, Obong Victor Atta, the former governor of Akwa Ibom, took over and literally provided a sketching, as an architect that he is, of a roadmap for that. And by the time he finished, I just couldn't, they were all just going one by one by one. Chief Ayo Adebanjo, just name it. So Nigeria was present and Nigeria said, we want a new direction. What we have does not work. We must change things. And guess what? I think even more fascinating, Northern Elders Forum sent 25 representatives. Professor Iya Abubakar asked that Dr. Baba Ahmed, Hakim Baba Ahmed, speak on their behalf. And he said exactly the same things that Alhaji Ahmed Joda said. We want restructuring. We want a constituent assembly. We want... So I wonder what kind of government do we have? But let me tell you what frightened me actually, Reuben. Almost every one of these speakers was snide about the current democracy we have. Almost every one of them thought that there was no legitimacy to the current political class in Nigeria, that how many of them have won any election. I was shocked. It means the Nigerian people don't believe that this democracy, it's a military coup that we have in Nigeria. That really shocked me, But whatever it is, I was lifted in my spirit that such eminent Nigerians collectively, whether it was Southern Kaduna, whether it was Northwest or South, spoke almost with one voice about the need for change in Nigeria. So that was an elevating meeting. And we then put to them the fact that we have already begun to put together a committee that would work the Constitution and develop something, which was the other meeting. And that Constitution Review and Drafting Committee, what our thoughts were, and by the way, this is all under the platform of the NCF, the National Consultative Front or Forum, which had committed itself to try to build a movement, non-partisan at this moment we know of, that can focus on the challenges of nation building in Nigeria, what reforms need to take place, the most important being political party reform. Because the political parties are not democratic, they make it difficult for true leaders to emerge. As I think you or somebody else has said, they are special purpose vehicles. And they're really used to obstruct democracy. Current political parties in Nigeria are used to obstruct democracy and prevent the leadership that can take the people to where they should go. So we at the NCF have been committed to developing all of those. And through the Constitution Drafting and Review Committee, we will be able to take the outcome of the Jonathan Conference, the Obasanjo one, and new thinking about the kind of constitution we should have. This committee will synthesize all of this, provide us a draft. This draft can then go to the Constituent Assembly when it is put together to say, here is really all the work done for you already. Because we'll have a tour of the country with town hall meetings to put this draft constitution to the people and then to get them to own it. That's the only way it can be called the people's constitution, not the fraud that starts with we the people when no people met at all.
Take you back to the first conference that you talked about of the elders. What do you say about the alienation between the older and the younger generation in Nigeria? Because a young Nigerian will say, well, okay, a group of geriatrics are planning for the future of Nigeria when they had their entire lives the opportunity to make a difference. Because, young Nigerians blame the older generation for creating the problems we have. And an average young Nigerian listening to us is likely to say, well, old men planning for a future that they will not be part of. Of what relevance is that to them?
Well, I mean, in the manner of speaking, that has some ring of truth, but it also has its limitations. I have had language used before. Amazingly enough, many, many years ago, when General Obasanjo got out of prison in 1998, he quickly convened, that's while he was still waiting for the Holy Spirit to tell him what to do. He quickly convened a meeting of Nigeria's leaders at Gateway Hotel in Ota. Yes. And they were mainly very, very old people, and they're still around. In fact, some of them are in this. Now, somehow, Olisa Bakoba, the late, what's her name, the former editor of New Nigerian who died in Mecca, Bilkisu Yusuf, Bilkisu, myself, and I guess Claire Nwankwo were the youngest people in the place. So we kind of self-selected, sat together at lunch, and General Obasanjo came and sat with us and said the kinds of things Obasanjo normally says, Anyway, but what was interesting about it is that Professor Akimabu Guje, when he saw me, he said, "Oh, Pat, I'm glad you are here, I'm really so relieved that you are here." I said, "Thank you so much, but he seems so," he said, "You don't know what happened." When I was about to leave home, my son called me and said, "How come all of you who are about to die are going to discuss our future?" So okay. So that kind of feeling has been around for a long time. It's not new. But the truth is that old people have more of the liberty of having seen it all. They also are less afraid. They should be less afraid. In fact, I'm unhappy that old people are more afraid than they should be in Nigeria. Which is why I talk about elders. Look, you know this saying that when you are 18, if you are not a Marxist, something is wrong with your heart. If at 40 you are still a Marxist, something is wrong with your head. Because at that time you are paying school fees. You don't want anything that will disrupt your being able to pay the next fees. So you just take life easy, and you don't want anybody to cause trouble in your neighborhood. But by the time you are 70, you finish paying school fees, everybody's gone. You should have more courage. And this is why these old men stepping forward is valuable for society, because they have that liberty of having seen it, seen where it went wrong, and to offer. What our society needs is to be able to bridge the engagement of the generations. That's been the biggest failure of our country. And my view has always been that every generation has a duty to make the shoulders available for the next generation to stand on, so they can see tomorrow more clearly. They can combine the wisdom of old with the knowledge, the new technologies, the new enlightenment of now. And this is what makes a society collectively wiser than small groups of individuals within that society.
Prof, this country used to work. Professor Achebe wrote a book, he titled it, There Was a Country. And indeed, there was a country. Where did we just go wrong? And where are the intellectuals? This society used to be driven by intellectuals. Now it is led by opportunists, Yahoo boys, all kinds of Division 3 characters who are the highest level in every strata of society. What happened to us?
You know, when I talk about like the Nigerian story, I talk about the collapse of culture. At a point in time, things collapsed in Nigeria. The question is when, how did it happen? I can hazard a guess. I've often talked about this dangerous alchemy of soldiers and oil. The 60s were not El Dorado, no question. They had their troubles. But every season will have its own challenges. I just read I think it was a Time magazine editorial on Nigeria written in 1958. I just read it yesterday night during the Lancaster conference. And the essence of that editorial was to say there is no democratic journey, no nation building initiative that is seamless and completely smooth. But there was greater purpose to that early season. There were these young nationalists who were passionate about making their country go forward. And they generally were ethical. They were not perfect. There were scandals here and there. But they generally thought more of the people than themselves. This, unfortunately, resulted in certain competition that led to the crisis in Western region, which then ultimately triggered military rule. A group of idealist young soldiers who probably meant well, but were in the deep on something they didn't understand, tried to stage a coup. I went awry. They were pushed aside, taken over by officers who didn't know what they were doing, and the army just created a mess everywhere. Anyway, that led us into a civil war. The civil war of its own has consequence in terms of culture. I spent a lot of time trying to explain the impact of the civil war on culture that I think sometimes people are not thoughtful enough about. I give you one simple example. In the 60s, the stereotype of the Igbo man was of a man of very modest disposition of a man who would have, he'll be walking around in bathroom slippers, short knicker, and you will think this man is worth nothing until a car knocks him down and you go and you find £1 million under his bed. That was the Igbo man, the frugal person. Now, during the Civil War, in my opinion, this is an opinion of mine, to survive as one town fell after the other and you ran to the next town, the thing you needed most to survive was cash. If you got to a new town and you didn't have any cash, you were done for. So the mythical cash is king became the defining thing for the Igbo man. After the Civil War, it led to a degeneration of culture in which there was a near obsessive worship of money in Igbo culture. And then the Igbo man who used to be so modest walking around becomes the object of comedian joking. You know these jokes. They say, oh, and the car knocked down a house man. They say, government, come and pay for the hospital. The car is about to hit you, but man shout, oh, the car is knocking the man. Hey, Lexus. This kind of banality in stereotyping, for me, is really a progression from how culture was impacted by war. In a very broad sense, military rule created that, general cultural, if you will, descent. It was compounded by the abdication of the intellectual class. How did they abdicate? Well, first of all, the military, after they conquered the politicians, the only source of opposition was the intellectual class. And so the military went for the jugular. I mean, I don't know the details of this, but I remember Itua Igodalo's mother, who was secretary to the government of Western Region, told me a story once, many years ago, of how General Gowon came to Ibadan. General Adinka Adebayo was military governor of Western Region, and General Gowon came to Ibadan, and they'd been receiving a lot of petitions in the Dam barracks about my chair, the chair I was supposed to get. I didn't get the chair, and that person took the chair I was supposed to get. So he said to Adebayo, say, Bob, look, what's the problem with Ibadan? Don't you have enough carpenters? All these people are. So we went from this kind of banality, if you will, in terms of perception of academia, when University of Lagos professors disagreed with something, said they were going on strike, I think about 73. They were all ordered to move out of accommodation within 1 week, be sacked. And that the academic community became more like, is this the new society? And then one by one, they walked. Nigeria's finest minds began to leave the country. I once wrote an op-ed piece. I don't know if you were the one who published it in The Guardian years ago, that was titled The Generation That Left Town. That opinion was about how Nigeria's brain drain happened as academics began to leave Nigeria. Before that, what kept Nigeria going in terms of thought was the involvement of the academics in very robust conversation in newspapers. You couldn't pick the New Nigerian without Bala Usman, Patrick Wilmot, and so on and so forth, dominating those pages with thoughtful opinion pieces. You couldn't pick, first it was the Daily Times with Stanley Makebu, then the Concord, then the Guardian, with these kinds of, quality conversation. And that's what Jürgen Habermas, the German philosopher, actually defines as modernity, defines as democracy and its place, rational public conversation. As people began to leave town, as those who replaced them were not up to speed intellectually, in many cases, or just wanted to survive better, the arena of public conversation took a dip. And Nigeria suffered very, very badly for this. So the role of a Nigerian academic, which is so particularly important because as the great American political scientist James McGregor Burns, who wrote about leadership, puts it in looking at the kinds of leadership, one of the forms, besides transactional leaders, transforming leaders, one form of leadership he talks about is the intellectual as moral authority. And that is a leadership form that comes from his intellect. As you yourself, Reuben, many years ago wrote that the intellectual could be of two types. He could be either locked away in the Aso Rock of his contemplation, producing knowledge, or he could be l'homme engagé, the intellectual as man of action. Both genres of intellectual departed Nigeria in many ways, and Nigeria has been worse for it.
But Prof, the second meeting you held on October 1 came up with the idea of a people's constitution. Would a people's constitution on its own solve the problem? Are there other things we need to do, either in terms of the leadership recruitment process or how the thought process that goes into managing Nigeria? What are those other things beyond providing an acceptable
ground norm?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And in many ways, they are related, because you see, people participating in the making of this ground norm makes them owners of where Nigeria is going and affects how they act towards it. One of the things we must do beyond making a constitution is that we need to change the disposition of Nigerians from seeing society as the avenue for economic rent extraction to seeing society as an opportunity of aggregating endowments for people to produce and be able to produce their way out of poverty. What tends to happen is that because we have become so people of sharing, as I often say, share the gala, share the booze, we get to a situation where we're just looking for our turn to game the system. But gaming the system has never made progress. Gaming the system has weakened our institutions. And because our institutions are weakened, one of the biggest risks of doing business in Nigeria is regulatory risk. Your business is more likely to fail in Nigeria from the action of government than from any market condition you are facing. Because somebody wants to game the system, that person is in government or something like that. Or the institution is just so weak that with a little bribe, you can get them to look the other way when the wrong thing is happening. The result, therefore, is that the environment of business in Nigeria has a high level of uncertainty. I actually wrote a book on that. It was published in 1998. It was titled Managing Uncertainty, Competition and Strategy in Emerging Economies. So when the environment of business is full of uncertainty, what tends to happen is that somebody engaging in business in that environment will do one of two things. They will either not engage at all. If they're going to engage, they're going to find ways of hedging their risks. And that hedging process involves costs, which economists call transaction costs. When your transaction costs are much higher than from others, you can't compete with those people that have lower transaction costs. That's why the Nigerian economy is not making progress. Because if you were going to manufacture something today and you were setting up to import something from somewhere, the Ghanaian who is going to manufacture the same thing will get 90-day credits in the international market because he's in Ghana. In Nigeria, until they have the cash, they won't even talk to you. So the Ghanaian has 90 days interest value ahead of you. He's more competitive than you. So if you're going to go into another market, two of you, you're going to lose out. You don't have the same level of competitive strength. So we got to rebuild our institutions. If we rebuild our institutions, strengthen them, we make the right policy choices, we invest appropriately in our young people so that we'll get true human capital. They are well educated and they are well, and they can use that talent. Then they have to have entrepreneurship skills and a culture and an environment that supports entrepreneurship. Then the values of the country matter. If these things all then seem to be working together, what pushes and drives them? Leadership. We've got to drive a process of socializing a generation of leaders. That's why our political parties are so important to reform. Because right now, our political parties are designed to prevent leaders from emerging. It's a criminal enterprise. I mean, the only thing that can come out of those parties is a criminal management of a society.
We would like to throw our lines open to invite contributions from some of our listeners. And then on Zoom, I can see Larry Babalola. Thank you for joining us. Samson Eboye, thank you for joining us. Abiola Ajala, thank you for joining us. All of you on Zoom, I can see you from the studio here. And if you are listening on radio, the number to call is 0700 1051 1051. If it is WhatsApp, the WhatsApp line is 090 9916 4403. And you can also join us on our social media accounts at City1051 on Twitter and also on Instagram Live. And our guest, as you probably already know, and if you are just joining us, is Professor Pat Utomi. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, please identify yourself and your location, and then please keep it short and simple.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reuben Abati. You have on the line, calling me from Umawi right now. Good morning, Professor Pat Utomi. Number one, I quite agree with some of the things he has said, but at the same time, I want to disagree with him on the issue of the elders. Number one, the nation does not belong only to some set of people simply because they were here before, decades before some other people. If by now I'm talking about the likes of Abati Banjo and the other people there, thinking about the future of Nigeria, I think that is going to be very, very subjective. So that means that who are they going to be leading? Are they going to be who is giving them the mandate to talk on behalf of others? I think the great progress we have made was in 1998 when Abu Salami then started this transition in 1990 with the Muslim Constitution. And I remember very vividly that the late Ganiba Emi and some other people like Abakuba and the rest stood against that constitution. That what Nigeria needed then was not that 1999 constitution. And today, I think most of the problems we have today is around that 1999 constitution. And I don't see how we're going to get out of it. But sadly, the kind of solutions a lot of people are suggesting right now is already late in the day. That solution cannot work. But I don't know how it's going to happen. And I accuse Professor Pat Utomi when he appeared on Sunday Labo about 9 years ago. I hope he can remember that while people like him would only come out periodically for election alone, you have the intellectual capacity, you have a lot of integrity. People like us, you have so much respect in you. Why have you not seen it very, very, very easy to come out and govern to do the villages and whatever? Because I know what you went through in your APC gubernatorial primary in Delta State, that they did something to you. So for me, and I don't know how the solution is going to come, but whether we like it or not, these people are there, they are making so much money, they are not ready to leave, and what is going to them is just leave that. Because it's so sweet for them, and they don't care whether all the people in this country get poverty stricken. I don't know where the solution is coming. I don't agree with him in the area of some people thinking only about the solution without the youth. Well, here is a way to get of education. Go to everywhere now. The majority of Nigerians don't have education. They don't even know who to be your leader.
Hello, Prof. You heard that?
Yeah, I heard that. I was just going to say, well, there's nothing I disagree with him on as such. In many ways, he was reinforcing the point I was making. The country does not belong exclusively to those older ones. I think that maybe it's more convenient for them to lead off. That same October 1, after that meeting, I met on another Zoom conference with Yali Fellows. These were young Nigerians who had been as part of the Mandela Fellowship. And I had a message for them also. And my message was stronger with them, that they are more the future. They should take this course on. But because many of them are, what's the word, not empowered and all of that, it is helpful if these old men start up, but it's really their fight. It's really their work. And they must do their bit. I mean, I told them about what we did in our time, and they should feel a sense, almost in the Frantz Fanon sense, that every generation has a duty to define its mission and either betray it or leave it. The truth of the matter is that I've spent a good part of my adult life working with young people younger than myself, to try and empower them as much as. It's amazing when I look at the people who are amongst the, next generation of leaders, as it were, that are well-known people, the Nia Desonyas, the Feladro Toyes, Ubonga Esiens, Linus Okories, Fabi Dahosas. They were all people that I took aboard about 20-something years ago and began to mentor. And
Prof, you left out my name, Reuben Abati.
Okay, Reuben Abati. Okay, so that commitment has always been there with me, and and I think that for me, I'm just trying to fill a gap. I'm not even looking for anything for myself. People say, why didn't you do this, do that? I just feel that I have a historic duty to do my own bit. And I think that if you go back and look at the concerned professionals and the struggle, when the elections of June 12, 1993 were annulled, I mean, people were like going to go back into their usual. And I said to young professionals in this country, you can't. And they responded. And again, as I keep saying, Shegun Shoba made the point in an interview a few weeks ago. The concerned professionals was who chased the military out. It was who supported Nadeko and gave it teeth. It was who got beaten in front of Western House and St. Peter's Ajele. It was who said no. At that time, I was chief executive of a multinational company, but I marched on the streets. I was beaten. I didn't care. I remember I've told you the story, and Reuben, you know the story very much. Alex Ibru saying to me, my friend, you are still at VW? I said, yes. He said, and you are leading this protest against the government? I said, yes, I'm a citizen, I have a right and a duty. So we must, take the responsibilities for ourselves. It's not enough to blame people. We have a duty.
Take a commercial break, and when we return, City Talks with Reuben Abati will continue.
City Talks with Reuben Abati.
Welcome back from that commercial break, and for those who are just tuning in, welcome to City Talks with Reuben Abati on your number one lifestyle station, City 105.1 FM. I am, and I remain your host, Reuben Abati, and today our guest is Professor Utomi, Professor of Political Economy, a management expert, and a public intellectual. Remember, if you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 0700-1051-1051 and on WhatsApp 09099164403 and on our social media accounts at City1051 on Twitter and Instagram Live. Professor Utomi, thank you for staying with us. Looks like we have another caller on the line. And Peter Izoge, thank you for joining us on Zoom. I can see you right there on the screen. Well, looks like there's a call. Hello? Hello?
Yes, I
Hello.
can hear you.
Yes, please, your name, your location, and please
Can you
be
hear me?
brief. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Professor Utomi is also
Okay.
listening.
Okay. I disagree with Professor so many things. First, he said the military led us into civil war. It wasn't the military. It was the 1963 parliamentary system that led us into civil war. The 1963 constitution, because the then federal government put their mouth where it doesn't belong, in the Southwest affairs. And that was what led the coming in of the military. And immediately after the war, General Gowon promised the whole Nigeria that he was going to return Nigeria back to civilian rule in 1976. In 1974, when Gowon was tired, if you are going to return Nigeria back into civilian rule in 1970, when are you going to start the preparation? He said 1976 is unrealistic. Then Murtala Muhammad moved in. So when Murtala Muhammad moved in, he then promised Nigeria that he is going to return Nigeria back to civil rule. He now assembled Constitutional Drafting Committee, headed by Chief Rotimi Williams. Am I correct? And then General Murtala Muhammad said they should come up with a working system for the country, working constitution, to avoid the pitfall, that led us into civil war. And that is where Nigeria got it wrong, Mr. Abati, when you are asking where we got it wrong. This Constitutional Drafting Committee went into the United States to bring presidential system. They brought the executive arm, the legislative arm, but they left American judiciary behind. And that is the problem of Nigeria. And that is why this system is still working. People like Professor Utomi is not talking about it. People like Nigerian media, including Mr. Abati, you guys are not talking about it. How can you bring the executive arm, legislative arm, and then the judiciary, the engine that will make this system to work, they left it behind. Thank God, Nigeria was colonized by the British, and they colonized the American colonies. So when the American colonies came together, formed their government, they discarded the parliamentary system, and then the British set up policing system. When they set up the policing system, they set it up, to the benefit of the colonial masters to brutalize their colonies. But after Nigeria took over power in 1960, instead of them to dismantle this policing system, they kept it. Americans dismantled it. They came up with their own policing system, with their own judiciary. But we don't care. Nobody is talking about that. Because without that system, this country is going nowhere. Okay? Whether you are going back, you are discussing another constitution, I don't know how you are doing that.
Well, thank you very much. I think your point is very clear. Professor Utomi, I'm sure you heard him. He was saying the military
Yes, I did hear him. This is not cause-effect, chicken egg kind of causal relationship stuff. The crisis in Western region was terrible, but had the army not intervened, civilians would have sorted themselves out one way or the other in a less costly way than the civil war we had. Possibly, but everything is a factual counterpoint. Nothing can be argued conclusively now. He said, you said, it could have been, it should have been. But going further on the whole talk about the American system, what the British left behind, look, again, those are factual counterpoints. I know the American system. I was an intern in the US Congress. I worked with several US congressmen just to work that system to get a sense for it. The naked truth is that India took off like we took off from same British system, and he has held. Theirs has sustained, ours failed. The question is why? And you need 4 hours to do that. Interestingly, Ruby, tomorrow in the Nigeria History series that I host at 2 p.m., the CVL Nigeria History series, we're looking at the military in politics and how the army affected Nigeria. We're going to have 4 former chiefs of defense staff, amongst others, to interrogate this question of what military rule did to Nigeria and what military rule did to the nature of the military in Nigeria. Should be an interesting conversation tomorrow.
I see Peter Izogie on Zoom. Are you still there? Peter Izogie? He's not there, okay. But I saw Jesuefe on the screen much earlier. Jesuefe, you want to make a comment or ask Professor Utomi a question? Okay. Well, there's another caller on the line on radio here. Please, your name and please keep it brief.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Eddie from Songo.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Abati, good afternoon, sir. Well, my take on this, I want to ask a question. I want to ask Dr. Abati to me a question. My question is, don't you think that we should do away with ethnicity if we want this nation to go forward? Because we have already set aside merit instead of we have set aside merit. We're not looking at merit again, but we're looking at ethnicity. If my brother would be a leader, if my brother would be the president of the country, don't you think we need to do away with such things so that Nigeria will move forward? Because we're already in a circle. That's my question. God bless Nigeria in Jesus' name.
Prof?
Hello?
Hello, Prof.
Good afternoon.
Well, someone else is on the line. Yes, quickly, please. We have just about 3 minutes left on the program.
Okay. Good afternoon, Reuben Abati.
Good afternoon.
My name is Olaji Akubo from Command. I think for this country to move forward, we need a revolution that will be led by the president himself. Where we need this revolution? Electoral bill. Let us vote from our electoral unit, and then these votes are counted in our electoral unit and transmitted to the server directly. No politician can change that. The moment we can't change the results from the polling unit, we will have our country back.
Well, Professor Utomi, back to you. 2 questions there. One on ethnicity, the other one on the integrity of the electoral process. We have just about 2 minutes to wrap up.
Yeah, well, the problem with ethnicity is decreeing it will not stop it. It's not a matter of decree. We don't want ethnicity. It's a matter of what leadership example shows. If leaders ensure fairness, if there is a culture of meritocracy, then the fact that you are from a certain village will count less and less and less until people begin to forget that they come from somewhere. So it's not a matter of decreeing things. The problem with institution building in Nigeria is that we always think that institutions are put in place from a law. No. Institutions, in the best description of it that I can think of, it goes back to 1937 from the old institutional economics school. It's a settled habit of community. That's what institutions are. Of course, a nicer definition is offered by Douglas North in his 1990 book on institutions and institutional change. But that is really what the key is. How do we build institutions that ensure merit? This is what will kill ethnicity. About the last question was again, what was it again, Ruby?
About the electoral process, the integrity of the electoral process. Electoral process.
Yeah. Okay, that the president should lead the revolution.
Yes,
that's the needful. That's the important thing that should happen. But you have to be sure that the persons you want to lead certain things are disposed to doing so. So that's the first question. But the people who can lead it. I always give the example of Kano. The youth of Kano used to fight to ensure that the people's will was upheld. They were successful. That's why Kano used to be a one-term governor state until recently. And I think that the people have to do more than waiting for a messiah, a president or somebody to come and solve a problem. That's been the main problem in Nigeria. waiting for a Messiah. Think of yourself as the person who can make the difference, and then go forward and do something about it. That's what citizenship is about.
Well,
don't forget, that at the essence of society is citizenship.
Well, on that note about the importance of citizenship, we'd like to say thank you very much, Professor Utomi, for taking time out to discuss these various national issues with us on City Talks today. Our hope is that Nigeria would remain together and that our country will get to that future that we all envision. We also want to thank our callers and those who reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can reach out to me on my social media account at Abati 1990, both on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget to tune in next week at 12 noon for another exciting edition of City Talks. My name is Reuben Abati. The show was produced by Dodger Allen, Oluwaseun Adetitun, Abiodun Odunton, Damola Oludare, and Olanrewaju Elbama Onipede Jr. From all of us here in the studio, we say thank you very much. We'll be with you again next Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
City Talks with Reuben Abati.